You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now let's take back this background report that will push the conversation. We'll be right back.
In the face of economic challenges confronting Nigeria like rising inflation, agriculture and food security, energy security, low productivity, job creation, insecurity among others, President Bola Tinubu's administration is taking measures towards changing the narrative to ensure that Nigeria's economy is reformed for greater efficiency. The president, while launching the economy stabilization program aimed at revitalizing the nation's struggling economy, inaugurated the Presidential Economic Coordination Council. The target of the council include injecting 2 trillion naira into the economy in the next 6 months, boost electricity generation to 6 gigawatts within 6 months, increase oil production to 2 million barrels per day. Others are the creation of over 4.7 million new jobs, agriculture and food security, healthcare, social welfare and physical measures. To drive this initiative, President Tinubu and Vice President Shetima will serve as chairman and vice chairman of the council. Other members are Senate President, Speaker, House of Representatives, Chairman, Governors Forum, and 12 ministers. The organized private sector is represented by Aliko Dangote, Tony Elumelu, Abdulsamad Rabiu, and Amina Maina, among others. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be x-raying what this means for Nigeria's economy, how to realize the objective, and how it will impact Nigerians.
All right, many thanks, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, for that background report. And to get into the conversation, let me introduce here in the studio Dr. Emeka Okengu, who is a development economist. And he says, farmer?
Yes,
good morning.
A farmer.
I wish I could give
so he's not feeling the cost of tomatoes.
To give him for saying he says.
All right. And also joining us here in the studio is Dele Kelvin Uye, President of Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA. He represents Nigeria's organized private sector. Good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
And we have joining us from Kaduna another regular, Professor Yushawo Ango, Professor of Finance, Entrepreneurship, and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics, Kaduna State University.
All right.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's begin the conversation from here in the studio. Let me begin with Dr. Okengu. What do you make of the council, which has just been inaugurated, the membership of the Coordination Council, which has the private sector very, very well represented?
Thank you very much. A laudable, commendable program. You could say recreating the ERGP, if you may, because it's molded in that like. Membership also well intentioned and well spread. But you talked about the private sector, so maybe I could focus a little bit on the private sector. Apart from the private sector, there's also another sector they call the real sector. Okay, when you have the organized private sector, you also have the real sector. Maybe the 10 ministers that are supposed to be listed, that are supposed to be, could be able to give us some inkling. However, I don't think we should end looking at that council being able to solve the problems, because the council will need to work with documentation. I would have been thinking that after the announcement of a council, there would have also been technical working groups or technical working streams. Okay, so that what happens is that in now breaking into groups, which I hope they will, or staying together as a council, okay, which they should, the target is almost the same thing that the ERGP had. Remember that the ERGP also had a target of injecting 2 trillion. Now, I would have thought that why they are invited the big wigs, more of them should be brought in there, is for government to be able to now raise this pool of funds, maybe even more than 2 trillion, okay, and then begin to now look for those, areas, those niche areas. When government says we're going to be providing or producing 5 gigawatts of electricity, now what are these electricity streams? What are those, areas that we can be able to impact? Because government is talking about a period of 6 months. So we'll probably be looking at methanol, methanol fuels. We'll probably be looking at cell fuels. We'll probably be looking at methane. We'll probably be looking at hydro. We'll probably be looking at hybrids. And then when it comes to food security, and I'm glad he mentioned food security, I thought that what we should now be looking at are those innovative solutions that can begin to now make food available within the next 180 days. But in that council, I also think that there's a critical, agency of government that I thought would have been very, very, important to be there. And it will be the ICRC. Okay, the ICRC, Infrastructure Concession Regulator. Why? Because for you to get what they call an FBC based on an OBC, an OBC is an outline business case. An FBC is a full business case. I'm trying to make this point so you can get to where I'm going to. Usually, the OBCs are unsolicited. They are when you now have this huge program or viable project and then it's not captured in the budget. You can actually submit an OBC. Now, at the level of OBC, the ICRC clears your OBC and then allows you to now do what they call an FBC. And against that FBC, they issue you a certificate that now takes that project to FEC. You'll be shocked how many of such projects that FEC has approved, to run on concessionary, basis or on PPPs. Now, I felt that it would have been very important for that council to also look at such projects. And I can share one, which I've been involved in, that has the capacity, proven capacity, cleared by ICRC, cleared by FEC, okay, that has the capacity to generate a minimum of 5 million jobs within its 360, time cycle of operation. And it is in, the food industry or the food chain. So when we're looking at the council, no doubt about it, that there's no member announced there, that you can fault as a council. But I think it's now us now focusing on the TOR, okay, of what the council is supposed to be doing. I don't expect, Dangote to have time, or Tony Elumelu to have time, or even the president to have time to begin to now look at the nitty-gritties of where to put a power plant. But I think they will be more interested in how do we now get the funding. Okay, you guys come and now defend this project. You want to do A, B, C, D. Put them under the hot seat. Something like a dragon den, if you may. And then the moment you are able to now get that, clear from them, the money you're looking for does not need to go through the National Assembly or whatever, because there's a pool of funds. And at the end of this, if you remember SMIS from the central bank, where at one time government now got, banks to be putting aside, I think 5% or 10% of their profit, into an escrow or a special account. Then you now have a council that can be able to now oversight or review what it is you have, and you begin to engage. I tell you, when we draw this scheme down, maybe establish what you call technical working groups, maybe establish what you call, sector specific, result oriented, programs or sectors, you will find that, this program will now take a life of its own.
You've really itemized, the issues there. And, from inception, President Tinubu has always been emphatic about, rejigging the economy since the removal of fuel subsidy. Let's bring in Mr. Dele Kelvin Oye into the conversation, as the president of Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. Do you agree with some of the things he said, especially with having a technical working group, as part of the council? And the overall economy is expected to benefit from the stabilization program. Now, how encompassing are the main key areas in this, mandate given to the councils?
Well, first of all, I want to sincerely thank Mr. President, because the operating environment is very hostile and difficult for businesses. But we also thank him for also involving some of our big players, like Dangote, Tony Elumelu. But these two personalities are not members of the OPS. They represent their individual business. Okay. The organized private sector in Nigeria is made up of 5 organizations, which is NASIMA, MAN, NASMI, NECA, and NASI. So there's nowhere I can have access to Elumelu now to channel the views of the over 100 chambers of commerce to be able to impart on that committee. So the mistake we always make every time is to assume, or every time, this has been done by several governments, to pick some of these big players, and most times they go there to represent their businesses. If the person selling ordinary snail now, or somebody involved in every several other sectors of the economy, how does it get impacted by decisions that affect his own sector? I'm sitting here, I have over 1 million businesses under me. In our 71 city and state chambers, we have the highest office in Nigeria. We have the highest, some of my members, like Lagos Chamber or Abuja Chamber, are bigger than the entire membership of that committee in terms of their what they provide to the national GDP. So it's always important, because the government said realize the value of chambers of commerce, because when they go abroad, they do visit chambers of commerce. But when they are dealing in Nigeria, they tend to choose the people they want to talk to. So why I appreciate the effort, it's good to have a broad set of people there who can immediately impart the policies so that I can actually bring the views of their members and how they are affected. If not, you are going to have a situation again where people just go there. They only think of the few people that have been selected there, and the impact is not total. So we appeal to government for government to look at it, the possibility of making it more broad, bringing more people. I'm not just asking for myself or for my organization, but the other organizations that ought to be there. Because it's not enough to say, oh, I have all the private sector. There's not enough, I can tell you. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of money to be spent. It's important that the shoe should be put where the shoe pinches. So this is what I would suggest. This is what my first contribution to that. Like I said, I commend the government. It's a good idea, but we should also work very hard. The operating environment currently is very, very hostile to businesses.
Right.
So can you talk about the main key priority areas in this council now, as the economy, energy, and all?
Yeah, we're very happy. What have been listed in the objective of the priorities is all embracing. Especially on the issue of food security, which is a major, major challenge now. And the government too also should not just set up this committee, should also show by some of these deliberate policies. Take, for example, the central bank policies on interest rates. It doesn't support business. When you are charging at 30-35% to borrow, there's no way you can make any reasonable, can even do any real investment. What is even more important, which at last meeting we had with the central bank, the OPS, we actually met with the central bank governor. We told him that I actually raised the issue that even if you are trying to say new money should not enter so that people cannot borrow, what about settled transactions? If I borrowed 10 years ago and I've not finished paying, I'm affected today by the current rate. You are just increasing my costs when I've already sold, even paid dividends at the time I borrowed the money. Now, as of today, I'm affected by current policies. So we must find a way to really give proper palliatives, support to existing businesses so that they can be able to cope with the current operating environment. We are going to AFCTA now. We need to be able to compete. I cannot see a central bank that is charging 18% at MPRO. What do they need all the 18% for? They can, if the central bank reduces what they charge banks, you can crash interest rates. The problem is not the private sector. When they say there's too much money, after all, the government is running a parallel budget now. So I don't think we have the problem. The problem has been the way you efficiently allocate these resources to support businesses. So we really commend Mr. President for the policy, but it should make it more granular. Let the effect be all-encompassing. And you should not mistake individuals or because the size of their businesses represent all the businesses in Nigeria. It's not true.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Oye, for your contribution so far. Now let's get to Kaduna, where we have Professor Yushau Ango. Now, Professor Ango, thank you for your patience. I know that you've listened in and may have been able to glean a thing or two which you may want to react to. But what do you think of the timelines given to the committee? Is it realistic given the mandate that it has?
Very much. I have taken note of all the submissions so far. I think the issue about having technical committees or sector-specific committees, naturally, it's there, it's in the background, I'm sure. It won't be possible for this committee. This committee will meet maybe monthly or so. Definitely things have to happen in between these periods, and the best to handle this will be the technical committees, experts, I'm sure, in the background who are working on this. Now, having said this, I believe if we look at the concept or the idea that has been stated by the first speaker, we have passed through something like this before in the when we were looking at economy reconstruction or regenerating the economy, especially after COVID and all those. And the way the committee was formed was more or less similar. Now, what I think, in addition to that, is that we should look at it in different perspectives. The milestones that have been established, especially what needs to be achieved in the next 6 months, is laudable. It's good to have some short-term goals that we want to achieve, especially there are some low-hanging fruits. The president said something about the fact that we are generating only about 4.5 megawatts is something that we should not be happy about, naturally. So I believe, improving that to the point that is being envisaged in the next 6 months is possible, because, like I said, there are some low-hanging fruits. The capacity, the generating capacity in Nigeria is about over 13,000 or so, if I remember, and that means there are some of them that you need something to be kick-started, so that they can start production. Or there are some, probably the issue is getting enough gas, so as to power them. So I'm sure they will work along that line and ensure that those low-hanging fruits are taken advantage of. But I think in the long run, what we need to do, especially with this, is to ensure that, yes, we have some short-term goals. We want to invest 2 trillion in this period. But for this economy, we need something, and for this committee to look at something in the medium term, to also look at something in the long term. I think we need something that will last, not just periods of crisis, but that will last a long time, maybe this administration and beyond, so that we can actually plan long term and medium term, especially as it affects the economy overall.
I will return to you, to give us some of your views. But let's return here to the studio where Dr. Okwengo is seated. Let's itemize some of these measures that the president has talked about, and how should the council proceed in actualizing its mandate in these areas?
Okay, let's take energy. Energy says 4.5. No, not megawatts, gigawatts.
Gigawatts.
It's gigawatts.
Yes.
Now, is it doable? Yes. Medugri will give more than that, just by focusing on hybrid solutions to the sun. Okay, the desert will give us twice that. Lagos and the coastlines will give us twice that if we focus on what they call, thermal energy solutions, where you put turbines inside the sea, and these two, I've mentioned, are both sustainable. Okay, they are both green or blue, if you may. But what you need to do that is technology, and that's why I'd be more interested in seeing the ministers and the technical working groups, because that's actually where the meat of the job is. Okay, it's not to be assumed. When they were doing the ERGP labs, the framework was set up for everybody to see. The sector experts, that were supposed to be engaged in it were all identified. And then, work groups, were now given assignments to begin to now develop these documentations. Now, in this case now, I won't even be talking about documentation. I will now be talking about blueprints. Okay? You will now have documents that can now be invested upon, now where you have a council that you need to go and take that document to. So you go to agriculture and food security. The president, at his inauguration, had talked about, I think, 500,000 hectares of land, and then supporting youth agriculture, which is even in this, document now, supporting, young people to get into agriculture now. That support, is very heavy. That support has to do with 3 major things. Thing number 1, giving them the skill. Thing number 2, giving them the instruments. And in this case, there are 2 levels to this instrument, hard and soft. Okay, when you're talking about, maybe your software solutions that can be, like he talked about the imagery, and And then you talk about the equipment that they'll be needing to be able to do this. And in these days where you have virtual agriculture, where you have, like China now has a pig farm that's about 100 stories, taller than the biggest stories you have, and they're farming pigs in there. You now have vegetable farms that are 30, 40, 50, stories are virtually. You also talk about hydroponics and aquaponics, apiculture, et al. Now, this is where that support now needs to be given impetus to. But you just don't wake up in the morning and go and start ordering, equipment for A, B, C, D. They have to now be based on realistic outputs, what they call cash flow, evaluations. You just don't carry a loan and put. You need to now do a proper evaluation. From 2018 up to about 2 years ago, I was involved, in the development of a bioeconomy for Nigeria. It was a project, that went to FEC. FEC had approved it. It showed clearly, as I speak, that project had, at the point in time FEC was approving, had 30 universities. It was a triple helix program, okay, that were involved in it, signed on all across the country. And it was supposed to use cassava, okay, to be able to produce both bioethanol that was supposed to be used in our fuel industries and about 13 other products that had to do with pharmaceuticals, animal husbandry, et al. Now, that project is more or less sleeping. And it has the capacity, and I'm saying this on national television, to generate 20 million jobs. Create a new economy for Nigeria. Had been adopted by FEC. But unfortunately, not under this administration. And maybe nobody has brought it to the notice of the president, because we have, that's what I'm saying to you, that ICRC would have been one of those agencies that the president would have called up to say, give me the list of all, concessionaire, deals that we have gotten into here. And let us now see the ones that has to do with technology transfer, technology acquisition, and then rail sector development support. You'll find out that this project already has a life. On our own, running that project, we have not injected money, and it is there for people to see. ICRC was there 2 weeks ago, and we're amazed at what we could do, without the support of government. Now, let's go to the third one now, which is health. When you're talking about health, I come to you, each time I will sit here, I want to use Medugri. Atisemin, at one time, became one of the most sought out, phytos, okay, for the treatment of malaria. Yes. Medugri, under the Ministry of Health, had a huge project on the grain of, the plants that they could extract atisemin from. What has happened to that project today? I think it was a woman who was a director. I think she was from that area. I don't know. I'm not so sure. So let me not say what I don't know. If that program is still breathing. Imagine a situation where you have the pharmaceutical, council working with the people under my brother's purview, because most of the people he's talked about are just not only traders. There are also companies who are into extraction, okay, who are into processing, who are into aggregation. Imagine if, my brother Dele had about 10, 20, 30, 40 people extracting artisemia, and all they needed was the support of government to be able to now get those phytos, those extracts you need to begin to make medication. Yes. That's how you build that coordination. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you talk about security or national security. Security is a two-way thing. It's a chicken and egg. Okay? Now, first and foremost, when you're creating safe corridors, for instance, okay, like the kinetic and the non-kinetic, you're creating safe corridors based on what you're going to be offering. Again, let us use the worst, okay, or where we have our worst problems in Nigeria. Maybe the Yobe or the Bay, Yobe, Bauchi, Yobe, Adamawa, Borno axis. Now, how many people know that the best, granites or the best rocks to make cement is in Adamawa? Yes. How many people know that Borno, where you come from, has the best copper, which is the blue copper? How many people know that Bauchi, has a hill they call Ligi Hills, that is the hill of barite? Barite is an ingredient that you use in making drilling mud. Now, imagine a situation where you now begin to now focus on establishing those mines. Coal mine in Adamawa, surprisingly, somebody will say, okay, right? Barite mines in Bauchi and Medugri. This will take 1 million people. You put them into what I call, in parentheses, free to come in and move out prison yard. Every morning they walk into that prison, you lock the gate, very happily. By the time they are leaving the prison, all they're thinking about is sleep, because they are dog tired. Now, this is how the white people were able to have held us down, and there were no crises. If I had time, and I've told you how they quelled, the Kano crisis. So the point I'm trying to make is that the president, in his wisdom, has thought out this good program. But the moment you begin to assume, and this is where in development, you are now walking the tightrope, never assume anything. Put everything on the table, let's have your framework, and then be able to now, argue against those things. Not the things we imagine you're doing behind. No, why would you do so? When they were doing the ERGP, everybody who was involved in that project, every step of the project was known. Okay, who are going to be playing what roles? There were calls for proposals. Like I'm saying to you now, one of the greatest things I think that President Tinubu should do, is to be able to ask for these projects, okay, that were in operation. Now,
the
look
existing
at
projects that are there.
Nasima comes here and says to you, oh, the people you put in representing us are not our members. He says to you, I have 1 million members, and there's no way our 1 million members can reach these two. That's huge. It's not something to be taken lightly. And he goes to say, it's not to put me in the committee, but to make it possible for us to be able to give you that access to know, what our needs are. Now, if they are not in the council, they can now be in the technical working committee, or a group that can be able to now present a paper that can benefit from this 2 trillion, if the target is 2 trillion. So we must give responsibilities to everybody. Council, your role is to aggregate 2 trillion and then review every document, every proposal that is coming. Technical working committee, don't give us documents, give us blueprints that are fundable and that has clear returns on investment, that has a first roll of 180 days, and then the medium and long term,
talking about blueprints. Now, because you are a farmer, I'm going to ask you this as well.
Yes.
Food cost is a major driver
Yes.
of the current inflation that we have in the country. Yes. If you have access to the committee, what would you be telling them regarding food security?
I will take them to my resource center in Kuje. I keep telling you people, those who have come, have come. As I'm talking to you now, by tomorrow I would have had 3,000 seedlings of yams in my bags. By tomorrow, next tomorrow. I'll take them there to see and say to them, let every community in Nigeria that has 300 people have something like this. And there are young people now who are doing soilless agriculture. They are all over the place. So what I'll be saying is that if you want to cure food insecurity, let us begin to produce food. And you don't need 500,000 hectares of land to produce food. What you need is a small room like this that is supported by the right equipment. You will begin to produce food as well. I keep telling you this. In my own house now, I have at least 100 bags that yams are growing inside. This is my 3rd season running. So if we have everybody doing the same thing, okay, producing livestock where they can, again, you have to be very conscious of now what we call, the biocodes, so that you do it, under safe areas. The mining sector is another sector that can give you 20-30 million jobs.
Yes.
So it's so much to talk about, really.
Indeed, there's so much to talk about, and still talking about the fiscal measures that I know there are plans. I'm coming to you, Mr. Oye. There are plans, for subnationals, and I'm sure you have a lot of businesses spread across the country at the subnational level. They are supposed to match funds to help develop the business climate. Now, what does this imply, and how can the gaps be closed?
First of all, you just mentioned the issue of fiscal policy.
Yes.
There's no fiscal policy yet for this year. There's no one for 2024. You are waiting for the presidential committee to submit their report, or if they have submitted. So this is the problem. That has been the biggest problem. You can't plan. You don't know just put it in layman's term. A fiscal policy allows you as a business to know the low and the highest point of what policy will happen that year. It normally is released every year at the point where you are releasing the budget, so that people are able to plug in. But that's why you see the central bank comes with almost at different times changing their monetary policies, because there's no bandwidth which they are operating under. Then you take that again, go to the customs. They are charging whatever rate they like, because you don't know what bandwidth they are using. Then the biggest driver of inflation we have in Nigeria is our currency.
Okay.
Because the currency is not stable. So most people are not able to plan with it. And you can see the losses. If MTN and DSTV are complaining that they are losing money, these are people who have inelastic demand for their products. They are complaining. You cannot imagine someone that is selling other things that are perishable goods who are not even sure. So there is even a big problem we have in the country, which is a lot of produced goods are in the warehouse. They are not able to sell. First of all, you don't know if you sell today, they'll be able to restock, because the price for restocking may change. Or better still, people cannot afford it because of inflation. So it's a major, it's not just to set up this committee. There are things the government can also do almost immediately to support businesses by making sure, even if it's a midterm, now we're already in the seventh month now, let the fiscal policy be rolled out so that at least people don't lose the whole year. Then secondly, work on the rate, the exchange rate. It's very important. Because if you are not able to work, if people don't know, most of us are keeping dollars, not because we need to keep, but we don't know whether if you put naira in the bank, it will change before you wake up tomorrow. So even the market women now, they keep their money in dollars. So it has created that kind of subconscious. Then there's another issue which most people have never considered, and it was mentioned recently by Dogara, the former speaker. When you change to BVN, most people now don't keep their money in banks because they don't want you to know the extent of their wealth. So they keep most of their money in dollars at home. So these are some policies that have been made maybe to enhance transparency, but it has backfired given our kind of economy. So we have to find a way to actually appeal to people to not to keep dollars when they don't need to keep. And the only way you can do that is by stabilizing it. Even if you want to change at 1,500, let us know that in the next 1 year it will stay around there. So people can now make business decisions because they don't know. They're always planning for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. You don't run an economy like that. You have to give some level of stability. And that's why the government is not just enough to set up this committee. There's need to work on the bank rates, because the same government is giving interest rate through Nexim at 9% for people who have indoor exports. Same government is giving the loans with BOI at single digits. So what is wrong with this? What is wrong with our commercial banks? Why can't you? It's the same economy. If you want to play to be fair, you must bring in everyone to operate almost close to those rates. I don't say the commercial banks should do exactly what the development banks are doing, but you must find a way to interrelate what they are doing. Because the man that goes to borrow from the commercial bank, how does he expect to cope? Where there's the only place you can have access to funds. So government needs to support what it's doing also with policies. I've always told them they should use more stakeholders engagement. Most times policies are rolled out, there's no stakeholder engagement. Or better still, they call people whom they regulate. If you call people who regulate, they can't talk. But if you call consumers, people like us, different independent associations, before you take decisions, we don't have, there's one now, the solid minerals are just brought in new rates for all their services too. Everything is going up. The same government is complaining about inflation. You can't talk about inflation if you are responsible for it. The customs rate is a major driver of inflation. So this committee is a good idea, it's a huge opportunity, but we don't want the situation we have another Simate Amada under Gowon, where they have so much cash, they don't have enough plans to deploy it. So you must really have a blueprint, as my friend has rightly said, a basic blueprint that is transparent, everybody will see. This is what we want to do with the money. That's what should be discussed now, if we have enough people in the mix. But we don't want to wake up tomorrow and say, we've tried to set up this factory here, this factory here. In the issue of power, which he has mentioned, there's a lot of power that is being generated, but there's no way to evacuate it. There's a huge need for infrastructure. I have some of my members that generate about 60, 70 megawatts. They just shut it down because there's no way to use it. So they just use for their operations, the remaining they just shut it down. So we need to look at what is already available, how to support those people that have already done it, so that it can actually bring into the system where we can use this power. So these are the challenges. And I think, like I said, the committee needs to also come out. We need to see the blueprint so that we can all impart on it. As it is now, there's nothing, nobody's aware, and we don't want to for them to start with projects when you don't even tell us where you are going. because at least we can all contribute, because we really, really need this help for us to stay competitive. Most of our businesses are shutting down. We just had the British Nigerian trade group business summit. I had to appeal to them that let's form a committee, because those people that are still around, we should even find out what are the issues. How can we help them? How can we support them so that we don't have another closure on that company leaving?
Would that help in closing the gaps here?
Yeah, it's very important. You see, the biggest problem in Nigeria is if you have a problem with any agency or anything, there is nowhere you report to. There's nowhere you report to. If I'm running a business now, I have a trailer moving from Sokoto to Maiduguri or wherever. If there's a problem on the road caused by any agency of government, there should be like PEBEC or the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment that you can report to immediately that is affecting trade facilitation, that they will immediately make sure the thing is done immediately, so that people are suffering in these different levels. Our members come to us and we try at our level to write letters, to engage different ministries and agencies so that they can remove these bottlenecks. So these are some of the things that are really causing the challenges. People are operating in an environment that is very hostile, and they don't know who to report to when they have challenges. So I'm not just saying it's not just only to spend money. Let the operating environment, let the environment be much more enabled to support businesses. Let there be more grants, more support, where people have incurred losses, find out what the issues are, how can government support them with tax incentives. Take, for example, the issue of the $2.4 billion, which the CBN is still holding, that is refused to meet the forward issue. They should be resolved in an amicable way so that people don't, by telling them to go to police to go and report themselves to the EFCC. That doesn't make sense. I've never heard of where you are presumed innocent. Then, by our constitution, then the CBN tells you, go to police and shoot and let them give you clearance. We all know that everybody that go to law enforcement, you don't come back complete.
That's a good one.
Well, I'm not sure I understand
It's not an
what you mean by they don't come back complete.
What I mean by
they
that
don't come
is,
back armless or
no.
legless.
What I mean by that is, I'm not saying that the law enforcement is not doing its job.
Yes.
But even the watch I'm wearing now, they can ask you to provide the receipt on the spot. If you are not able to provide it, you are presumed to be in possession of a property reasonably suspected to have been stolen. This is what I'm saying. So you cannot.
And
it's
Nigerians
not,
don't keep receipts.
No,
actually.
they don't ask
something.
you about that transaction. They start by saying, "What is your tax? This is the equipment you have." That's what I mean by that.
Is receipted, actually.
So this is what I'm saying. We need to create an environment where business can thrive. It's not just enough to keep investing. Look at the environment. Compare. Like I told the National Assembly recently when I appeared in their retreat, I said, if you are to make any law now, you're no longer operating as Nigeria. Ask what Rwanda is doing in that sector. Is this law going to be better to make us more competitive than Rwanda? This is the way you should be thinking now. Because a global system, we're under the FCTA. You must prepare your businesses for that. Yeah. You cannot just say, oh, I'm National Assembly. I've decided, look at what they did with the oil industry. All of them left.
Yes.
Because they insisted they want to collect 3% for the communities. Where are the people, where are the IOCs now to collect the money from? Nothing. So you must operate having a global mindset. This is what Nasima is saying. With foreign direct investment, take for example now, we belong to a network of 170 chambers of commerce all over the world. Anytime they make this type of policy, they write to me and say, what do I think? What do we do? I have to be able to have enough information to respond to some of these inquiries. If not, when they write, I don't know, as a patriotic person, I have to still try to reply or try to get to the agencies that are involved. But what I'm saying in all this is, let all of us work together. There's too much working in silos. A lot of people are doing great things in Nigeria. Look at our creative industry. You can use it to change our ecosystem almost immediately. Agrics are another thing, like my friend here said. So all we need to do is let the information be available in a central pool. And one of the jobs of this committee, with kind of money they are going to spend, they should be able to catalyze some of these opportunities that already exist. They should not just go for greenfield projects. People have done a lot of work. They just need a little bit of push for them to maximize or at least increase their capacity so that the impact can be felt within the shortest time and Mr. President desires. Because we need to stay competitive. We don't want to end up like what is happening in other countries where they're having challenges or riots in their house. We don't need it. Because those things will be a major, major distraction.
Yes.
Because the people that are going to be affected are even sometimes the genuine people who are contributing to the sectors. So we need to really work. We don't need time for crisis. We need to work together. And that's why we we are so happy about this policy of government, but let's use it as a point to change our story.
And do it right.
I don't want something that you just throw money at things. It's not money. Sometimes it's planning, policies, so that I can change all this.
All right, Mr. Oye, thank you very much for your contribution there. Let me take that very short trip to Kaduna again to get Professor Yushau Ango involved once more. Prof, Mr. Oye alluded to it earlier. I don't know if you agree that there are missing elements in the membership of this committee. Plus, you may want to tell us about the fiscal measures being targeted to improve access to finance for the housing sector, the MSMEs, and the manufacturing sector. Of course, some of these include, more support for youth entrepreneurs and a manufacturing stabilization fund.
Thank you very much. The issue about constitution of the committee, I agree sincerely with the submission made by the chairman of Chambers of Commerce. Certainly, the economy, as you know, is made up of different sectors or different players. Among them, some are even below this organized, so-called organized private sector. There are even those who are downtrodden. Now, when you are coming up with policies, as is being envisaged, that will promote establishment of medium and small-scale industries, will encourage youth to go into entrepreneurship, and encourage youth to also own businesses and things like that. All of that require, somehow, for everybody to see transparently how the mechanics will be, how will these things work. So to that extent, I think the submission earlier that we need to know the structures, we need to know where, things are being worked at, so that you can make submissions or at least be able to, as a group, make submissions is essential. I've seen also the requirement or the position that certain number of manufacturers or big corporations will also, there will be some interventions. All of these along the lines of ERGP, as earlier stated. Now, the most important thing is we want to see transparently how are these going to be identified. I mean, we know that in Nigeria, as it is now, structurally speaking, there is a lot of poverty, there is a lot of unemployment, and I believe all these measures are aimed at reducing some of those things. Now, how is this going to be implemented? I mean, how are you implementing it? Now, when we give, for example, let me give you an example of some interventions recently, that maybe 50,000 will be paid to 100,000 people for over a period of 3 months across each state, 100,000 across each state. Now, you are talking about 100,000 in Bayelsa and 100,000 in Kano. Look at the disparity, look at the population, look at the poverty index, look at the need index, I mean the reality of needs. So when we make some policies, whatever policies we make, and especially as regards this and as regards other policies that may come up, we should look at the areas of need. We have real problems in Nigeria. Some of the real problems, as has been stated and identified actually, including even in the President's 8-point agenda, includes security, includes the issue of food security. So if we are going to do this, and I mean, of course we know unemployment is a problem, especially youth unemployment. We have maybe over 100 million youths, maybe, I don't have the statistics, but I'm sure maybe 40, 50, 60 million of them are either unemployed or underemployed. So we know we want to create policies that will bring everybody and ensure that we solve problems. Major problems in Nigeria is poverty. Poverty is leading to insecurity. Poverty is also not helping us with regards to food security. So what do we do? What is going to happen? I mean, is it by this some little interventions here and there that we think will resolve all this? I don't think so. I think we have to look at things more holistically. That is why I propose that we should have long-term plans, we should have medium-term plans. We should look back at policies that have been made as recent as the last regime. Many of them are about being implemented, like the CNG, you know, combustion of and things like that. It was part of ERGP. I mean, a lot of these plans were there, but when we remove policies or initiatives that were given by previous governments, and then we start every now and then we start a new one or a new initiative, then people lose focus. I mean, for example, the previous government deliberately came out with a policy that we want to be self-sufficient, say, for example, in rice production and processing in Nigeria. And investors went that way. So much investment had gone into that way. So, for example, if a new government should come in, and this particular government, and do as if they are not focusing on that, then we'll lose that advantage that we have had. So what I'm saying is that whatever we want to do, we should take cognizance of the realities of what we need. What we need in Nigeria in order to boost the economy is actually to ensure that we reduce poverty, is to ensure that the local production and processing of things improves, is to ensure that the value chains are there. And what we need to do certainly in this light, in addition to all the sectors that have been mentioned earlier, especially the issue of minerals, solid minerals, the issue of agric and other things, what we need is to ensure that in every place, let's take the one product, one local government initiative, for example. Let's do that. Let's ensure that we develop it from the beginning to the end. And in whatever policies we make, especially in opening our doors to foreign businesses, we should ensure that Nigeria's interest is always protected. What I see in the spirit of opening our economy, is that we are allowing foreigners to come in. And in fact, a foreigner, a Chinese, I'm sorry to use the particular example, will come into Nigeria, hire policemen to guide him or her, and go into our forest, cut all the woods, and then transport them to China raw as it is, as if we don't have any national interest. Whatever we do, let us have some national interest. Somebody mentioned the idea of, for example, some of our, if you like, forest resources that are actually medicinal in nature. We have a number of them. A lot of them are being depleted because of what we are doing to our forest. So we need to do something, and target specific things and ensure that we achieve something. We have achieved something with regards to rice, for example. We have the capacity substantially to process our rice. Can we do the same for a lot of medicines that we do over the counter? Because we have all the medicinal plants in Nigeria. Can we regenerate them? Can we ensure that they are there? Can we protect and ensure that, more importantly, we provide employment to local people? Can we ensure that whatever we do in agriculture promotes youth engagement in agriculture? We may not have the capacity for long or big-scale agriculture, but allow every young man, the capacity to own, let's say, have a hectare, and then provide the technology and support him or her so that we at least feed ourselves. If we don't feed ourselves, then that is where we'll begin to have problems. Whatever we do, I believe we will not achieve what we want to achieve if we don't or are not able to feed ourselves.
Ango, I'm still going to say with you, everything you've itemized and mentioned in your response has to boil down to the energy security in Nigeria. And that sector has always been a problem. Without power, no business can go on in any country. And Nigeria needs, the political will to make sure that the power sector or other sectors will prosper under a policy that really works. The power sector needs the political will of government to look into it, because we can't rule out corruption in it, but still, without power, anything that is in this policy, all these measures that have been mentioned in this policy by the Economic Council, do you think it will work without energy to fuel it?
I accept your submission totally. I'm comforted by one thing. Mr. President, when he was governor, he did some power intervention. I remember, he brought some emergency power to Lagos, and it became an issue because of the legalities of the matters then. So what I will propose, we have done some grandiose arrangements before, trying to power the nation. I remember over 16 billion or so spent during Obasanjo time. So many interventions, power related. What I will encourage Mr. President and this committee to look at is to ensure that we're to reduce, to go for local, generation wherever possible of electricity. rather than this national grid that keeps on collapsing every now and then, you know, wherever you have excess, then you put it in the national grid. Small, if you like, hydro plants, small, if you like, solar plants, wind-powered plants, like somebody mentioned, thermal, maybe ocean, plants, whatever it is that can be tailored to certain specific locations and ensuring that those people in those areas have power. I think that is what we need to do. This grandiose arrangement obviously is not helping matters. Now, of course, the thrust of what President Obasanjo did was to use or try to take advantage of our enormous gas resources. And that was why a lot of the plants were going to use gas. But look at what happened. I mean, we are sabotaging ourselves more or less. We have seen, for example, even in terms of that, you know, in terms of looking at national interest, remember, it took Dangote to come out openly and said they were being sabotaged, you know, having done this strategic investment on behalf of the country, but they had been sabotaged, you know, in ensuring that they get this. Now, imagine this kind of thing. So I believe whatever power initiatives we will need to do, in addition to ensuring that the distribution issues, because there are quite a number of distribution issues, a number of places don't have enough transformers, just simple transformers. These discos don't want to supply transformers. They've just taken everything. A community, you know, in my own area, we had to come together to buy a transformer. And then we had to pay them, you know, to test it and ensure that it's installed. You know, this kind of thing, this is what is happening. So whatever, in addition to that, in ensuring that the discos are doing what they're supposed to do, in terms of generation, let's localize it as much as possible. If a local government can generate power that will be just suitable for that local government, I think we should encourage that. Small plants, you know, hydro, solar, whatever it is, I think will be the solution, rather than big plants like has been done before.
Thank you very much, Professor Ango. Back here in the studio, let me quickly get to Dr. Emeka Okengo. You know, health and social welfare is also covered in this stabilization program. Attention will be paid, of course, to the provision of medicines, insurance policy, health workers, as well as primary health care facilities. So what would be your recommendations to the council?
Let me share some very personal experiences. About 8 years ago, I had gone to the Ministry of Science and Technology to get into a working relationship with them. It took me 8 years to get that MOU signed. And what was it about? It was supposed to be, you know, creating what we call, you know, climate smart community-based resource centers, just like the one I have in Kuje, to replicate it. The National Planning Ministry then had sent in staff, wrote a report, said it was a very good idea. And then I had gone to ABU Zaria. I think I'm the only person or company that had gotten into an MOU with the ABU Zaria, Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, to deploy their research outputs on growing fodder for cattle. They had now done a research of over 24 years period where they had identified 24 species that could grow in 36 locations. I had gone to the Pharmaceutical Production Association or whatever to get into an MOU with them for them to now start commercializing some of their research outputs. One was a cure that they found for diabetes. And what was the ingredient for this diabetes? It was scent leaf and bitter leaf. But they said they couldn't now scale up because they were not able to produce this on a commercial basis. So part of what it is this program was supposed to do was to now start making certain that we had these inputs produced, you know, in such a volume that they could now translate into, you know, product outputs. 80% of the times I'm not able to see the director, talk less the minister.
Which you are supposed to have access because you have ideas.
It's not even ideas, we have understandings.
Okay.
So it can be quite frustrating. I've just shared one with you that we had gotten to the point where, but you come in there and then you can't see a minister. You can't even see a director. It can be that disheartening. It can be that discouraging. Okay. When you have, you know, outputs. I was consultant to one of the agencies, I don't want to mention them, on what they call their work cluster program. And part of what we wanted to do was to make certain that you now begin to now cluster things around the CDAs, the Community Development Associations, so that you can now begin to now aggregate and then get to the point where you can start creating common shared, infrastructure. All right? The problem we have in Nigeria is that when there's a new kid on the block, 80% of the times, pray to God Almighty that they see some value, in you, not even in what you're bringing. Otherwise, everything that had happened before is swept under the carpet. And I think on this, I would have asked Mr. President, anybody who can tell him, to say, why don't you just set up a committee? And what this committee should do is to generate everything that government had approved under FEC. Let me say it. And I want a committee where anybody can go to. And then I promise you that in 24 to 48 hours, you are going to get a response why your project is stalled. I tell you today, if Mr. President does it, he will be flooded with more than 200 projects that will give him over 100 million jobs already existing. But stalled because there's some political consideration, because there's some angst, there's some I'm not interested in this, there's some I want to do a new thing, there's some it has to be my project. And it is both at the national and the sub-national levels that will shock you. It's even worse at the state levels, where you have projects that can be able to help states, and then you can't see a commissioner list a governor. But by the time they leave office, and I thought, had it been? So we are getting to that point where we no longer have time. In a country today where people wake up and they don't know where the meal is going to come from, it is a tinderbox. So food security, to now come to you directly, Azu, in answering your questions. If you want to empower youth, it is very easy to engage them, but you need to build, first and foremost, that database. You need to build a mindset. Because what the youth see now are their mates who are driving Rolls Royce by doing little or nothing. So if you want to get them to go to do something that will be more meaningful to their life, you need to rewire their head. Yeah. And this is what I do. And this time I come here, I leave the studio sometimes and I get, people sending me messages. Oh, sir, we are very happy. Is it true that you have a farm? And I say, okay, let me send you a video of me. And a lot of them are getting enthused and encouraged to do so. That is the practical thing we want to begin to do. I'm doing that for my own children. So part of what the problem is that, like Mr. Oye said, there is nobody to talk to. There is no how you can reach anybody. It's a major challenge. The president means well, no matter what anybody says. When he says, I'm not sleeping because you're not sleeping, you can see that he's bringing our policies. But it is not enough to bring those policies. You must be able to support them with programs and actions. And then, most of all, information that can be able to say to you, in the health sector, these are the research outputs that were carried out. This is what has happened to them. I keep saying that the day we get science and technology right, if I was Mr. President today, I'll be Minister of Science and Technology, because everything we need to be able to get out of the doldrums, everything is in that ministry.
And also, the access door should be created for people to be able to get access to.
Well, that's difficult, Hajia, because you see, in creating access, there's something they say in economics: the man behind the door. Yeah. What is important is not the man, who sees inside, you. Yeah. It is the man who's behind the door. Oh, that man. Oh, don't bother about him. He's coming here to be speaking long grammar. Oh, these Nasani people. Oh, they have come with their trouble. What they want is money. So the man behind the door is actually the most important person. And people can just dislike you, because you answer, your name. People can dislike you because of nothing.
Sometimes you may have to force the door open.
No, you can't force the door open. Azu, listen to, I am 60.
Let's hold your thoughts because we need to pay some bills. We'll go on break and then we'll return to continue with the conversation. Please stay with us.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. We had to put Dr. Kengu on pause just before we went on that break. Perhaps you take a moment to round off your thoughts.
Well, what I think I'm trying to say is that Mr. President is doing well. We wish him well. Let him please announce a committee and let that committee seek for every project that was FEC approved in the past 8 years and why it's installed, he will be shocked at what he's going to find. You know, before we used to have this committee, I don't know what they call it now, headed by Abuja, you know, where you could just go and make a complaint or whatever. I can't remember that committee, it was under Obasanjo. The moment we begin to make it a little bit more transparent, and President says, let us look at what was even happening before. Naseni, Oya, give me the list of all your members, those who have closed down. Those, what are they doing? How are they doing it? How do they want help? How do you support that help? Because remember that when we were doing the agro thing, it was something similar. We did it for agriculture. It wasn't well, you know, run. And like we discussed, I said, don't throw away the program. Okay, go after the people, you know, that have misused it. And then make certain that you're able to support businesses. I am not, for one, I do not support giving people money. If you pay 100,000 a month now, go after the next 3 days, the man doesn't have 10,000 on him. He has just bought food, taking transport. My car had an issue from my office in Zone 1 to my house in Barimpa. I tried to do Uber, and he was giving me 7,000.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is this? I'd rather start walking home. So if you have a situation like that, so it's not irresponsibility that will make the person not keep the money. It is unproductivity. So the moment you begin to go where you now start, you know, raising this bulk, you can have it at 4 levels. Level number 1, those who are these 1,000, 1 million Mr. E has talked about, who are producing little by little, aggregate. It goes to level number 2. Those whose job is to be able to make certain for you to aggregate, you must have X amount of equipment, this truck, that truck, not like you had in the days, you know, where we have the marketing bots. And then at the 3rd level, the factories who will now be needing those that these suppliers are giving. You will have a country that is functioning.
Okay.
So on the last note, I will beg Mr. President, in supporting what he's doing now as a new project, let us now look for those programs that were already in place to support agricultural development, to support health development, to support national security, and what happened to them.
From what year to what year?
Let him start from whatever year he wants.
Yeah, he wants to.
But let him just go back, you know, a little into time, and he will be shocked that a lot of these projects are just gathering dust because probably, for whatever reasons, all of us know. I'm not going to be the one to say it.
The elephant, big elephant in the room.
It will show. I'm telling you about one I'm involved in that would have made you leave school, and as you're leaving school, okay, you are sure that you have a job, you have a farm. It's there now. So why wouldn't the government say, okay, whatever issues they are, we'll have with them, come out and say, Nasani, tell us why we've given your members so much money and you people are closing down. This person, tell us why this is happening. And then you will now have this council that will now begin to now drill and interrogate people. We are no longer reactive. We'll now become proactive. And I think that's the way we should.
Indeed, you know, somebody pointed out that most, maybe all members of the council have other duties to do. They are quite busy people, and like you said, the technical committee will help that. And you know, the council is also given the power to expand the Bank of Industry Rural Development Program. We talked about MSMEs and how to promote them, how to encourage them to do business. And a lot, like you said earlier, Mr. Oye, a lot of businesses are going under. They are going under, and so much MSMEs are losing their jobs and not being able to sustain. Now, what are the current problem areas in the Bank of Industry, and what do you consider the best approach to make this the most progressive way to do it, and how can it be done?
Well, first of all, NASIMA is one of the organizations that lobby the government from onset to close down the development finance at the central bank. On the average, development finance was spending about 2 to 4 trillion naira every year from that department. When they closed, instead of taking the money to put in development banks, or even give to commercial bank with certain mandates, which is one of the easiest, because at the end of the day, but the government did not give enough. They just gave a mere pittance. Because the biggest problem we have in Nigeria is the issue of capital. There's no finance, and even when it's available, it's very expensive. Until you make it affordable for people to walk into the banks within a reasonable time and at a reasonable price. We'll be doing things in what we call a subsistence level. Because if you want to scale up, you need capital. So capital is the key, apart from the operating environment. The issue of security, the issue of infrastructure, but capital is very important. Then the regulatory compliance. We are over-regulated in Nigeria. The cost, if you ask Dangote today how much is spent on government in building that factory, it may probably be about 25 to 30% just to meet regulations. So you need to create a situation, an environment where businesses can thrive. And one of the ways you can do that is before you make any policy, call reasonable stakeholders involvement. Ask the people in that sector, not the people you regulate, because that's what they do. That's what they call stakeholder in Nigeria. Because if you regulate me, I can't talk when I come to you, because I know you can take my license. Both the consumer, associations like us, and several other associations that are in that sector, so that we can be able to look you straight in the face and tell you these are the problems. The government needs a lot of genuine feedback. I've been in a meeting with Mr. President one day when we went for the iftar dinner, where people were talking about a Nigeria that does not exist. Until one of us got up and said, no, this is not correct, this is the position. So the feedback is very important. And the real feedback from this program, I want to tell Mr. President, no matter how good the ideas are, if the way it is implemented, the same people, you are applying this. If you check with all most of the people in that council now, there have been several committees before with different governments. I'm not saying they are not contributing or they will not contribute. We must have voices in the room that can tell you the truth. So it's very important government resolve the issue of worker salary, because that's become an overhang. Because everybody is waiting for strike. So people are not able to think in business or to plan. They should resolve it as fast as possible, because it's already causing more damage than the solution it brings. If we need to have different sectors, different tiers, whatever, just tell them no. This is what the federal government wants to pay. And start implementing your own. If the states are coming in late, then let's know where the problem is. If local governments are coming so bad, you must start something. You cannot wait for every tier to agree before. If you keep waiting, they will never agree. Because we started negotiations, the governors don't show up on time.
And workers will continue to
suffer. So the challenge is there. So the one you have agreed, even before you have finally agreed, start implementing it. If eventually, so what I'm saying in all this is, government needs to take the bull by the horn, make the operating environment more friendly.
How frustrating is it?
It's very, very hostile, I can tell you. Very, very hostile. It's like you're in a war front.
All right. Easy. All right. Very, very hostile indeed, according to Mr. Oye. But let's get Professor Yushau Ango back into the conversation. Now, a mortgage finance acceleration facility is also being looked at. How would you advise the council to proceed? And, what are the obvious obstacles or pitfalls that you think that this council must avoid in order to, proceed with the stabilization program?
The cost, the cost structure of not only the finance, because in the terms of finance, you can have it low digits, but in terms of the ability of the uptaker, the person, the worker who needs a house, because most of these mortgages are now given to people in formal employment, there is an issue of capacity, given the prices of things, given the prices of building materials and all that. I want to see, and I'm open to see what initiatives really government will come up with. How much will the houses cost? I mean, per individual. And so long as the idea is that we are going to go along the previous, what we used to have, then I think there's a lot of challenge there. Now, out of the informal sector, what do we do with the informal sector in terms of assisting them for as far as housing aspect is concerned? I've seen the various initiatives of the present leadership at the Federal Ministry of Housing, and I believe they have the expertise and they have the experience. But I believe one thing I will suggest, what that will probably reduce this, is to ensure that whatever it is, we use local materials. And by local materials, I'm not even talking about cement or things like that. We can go into burnt bricks and things like that wherever possible, so as to lower the cost and make it possible for people to take advantage of. Now, having said this, all that is being produced or promoted here in terms of the various, economic plans that we have, the most important thing is to ensure that there is inclusion. We are ensuring that as many people as possible can benefit from it. We will reduce poverty by whatever we do. We have to ensure that we reduce poverty, and like I said earlier, we must promote employment in whatever we do. So in that, it means we must have national interest first and foremost. We must ensure that whatever we do as a nation, Nigeria being what it is, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, for example, they have, history is looking at them. The whole world is looking at them, and the African continent is looking at them. I think it is about time that we develop something, that people will look up to us. It's a shame that for some things we now look onto Rwanda, for example, certain policies, people should be looking up to us. These three big countries in Africa, every country now will just sit down because, they have extorted so much out of us, and then they will start Africa Summit. We have done the US, we have done the UK, we have done the Europe, we have done China. Now it is Saudi Arabia Africa Summit, it is Qatar Africa Summit. Everybody will just call our leaders, as if we don't have initiatives ourselves. So we need to come out with initiatives, homegrown initiatives that will actually make us to be what we are, which is the leading economy in Africa, so that other people will look up to us. And I believe it is by looking in-house and developing our own capacities, which are so enormous. I think it is in doing that that will bring out the best in Nigeria and perhaps the best in Africa, and so that Africa or the global community will take notice of us.
Thank you. I like your reasoning there, and Nigeria is one big nation that others need to look up to in the area of economic development. And Professor Okwango, I'm coming to you as we begin to round up this program. Let's talk about the low-hanging fruit in the implementation of the measures highlighted for the council by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and what are they going to use as a working template here now?
Imagery, satellite imagery.
Okay.
The moment you get that satellite imagery, you now have a clear picture of where you're going to. Because the greatest challenge you have in the country today is food insecurity. Now, that can be tied to three other factors. The first factor being climate change, the second factor being banditry, insurrections, and then even youth attrition and rural-urban drift. Now, at the back of this, you might say, is climate change. So you must be able to now use that imagery thing to build your adaptation and mitigation strategies. That will be number one. So in putting it in one word, data. You must be able to generate, data on your human resources that you can now, start taking to capital, turning to capital, data on the availability of the spaces that you want to now do this production, data on the outputs that can be able to come, and then data on, what can now create your market share, and data on how you can now, for instance, work with NASIMA, because it is based on this imagery now, you can now be able to pinpoint what is going on here. Where is this cluster? Where do we need to now begin an urban-rural drift and a rural-urban drift? For instance, in Abuja, Abuja has, or FCT has, 5 local areas, and everybody is clustered around Amak. Why? Because Abuja, FCT has no anchor economy. If FCT had an anchor economy, where you have lands in Buhari, people do not need to come into the FCT. You cannot begin to build. But everybody is now clustered around, the butter and the honey. And what is it? Government patronage. That's just what can give you a clear example of how you can begin your urban rural drift. Okay, so the second, which is also very important, will be your youth engagement. The moment you begin to sow hope, what is most important, is that there's a proverb in Africa. It says that the hunger that has hope does not kill you. When you're very hungry and you go home and your wife says, wait for 5 minutes now, the food will soon be ready. You find out somehow there's some adrenaline, but imagine a situation where you go back home now, where is food? They say, mommy, there's no food, or daddy, there's no food. So we must begin to sow hope, which is what I think President Tinubu, wants to do, to show I am here, I want to do this. But we must, be very measured.
Indeed.
We must be very innovative. We must be very clear on what it is we need to achieve, how we need to achieve it. Okay, because around Abuja, you'll be shocked at the amount of young people that have come in here, and I'm just wondering what will happen when we'll go to the point where even with your 10,000 naira, you can no longer buy it to the audience.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kengo. We just have about a minute to go on the program. Mr. Oye, I don't know if you could take that to tell me or tell us how much of technology should feature in the plans of this committee to actualize its mandate.
Technology is a life power. And whatever you want to do, you must deploy technology. And Nigeria has done well with technology, fintech, and I think you want. But what I want to even say for the committee, it's very important that the private sector members should take charge so that we avoid another waste. I'm not saying the government cannot do it, because it will be a lot easier for the private sector to give ideas which government can use as a blueprint to deploy the resources.
Okay.
Transparency is very important. They also need stakeholders buy-in. If you act in an imperial way, very difficult for you to resolve the issues. So you must listen more to the people through the various stakeholders within those sectors.
And we have a president who listens.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a president who listens. Okay, Dele Kelvin Oye, president of Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NACIMA, also represents Nigeria's organized private sector. Thank you so much for your contribution to the conversation. Dr. Emeka Okwengu, development economist, as always, it's a pleasure. Maybe we'll find time with Victor to come to your farm and see how it's done. Yes, one of these days.
Encourage you so that you can start.
So that next time I'll go and say, farmer.
Yeah. Yes, and yes, indeed. And from our Kaduna studio, Professor Ishao Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics, Kaduna State University. As always, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. And a farmer too. Thank you very much.
That's great. Victor, we are surrounded by farmers.
Indeed.
and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you so much for staying with us for this time and listening to what our guests have been saying. Thank you so much. I am Juma Yusuf.
And I am Victor. So many thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you some other time.